Texas!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 87 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, Grace, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Katie.
Hey guys.
And EJ.
Hey everyone.
Today we'll be talking about Season 4, Episode 6 of 911 Lone Star, titled, This Is Not a Drill. So, as usual, a lot happened in this episode. At the very first, surprisingly, it was a drill, but then literally nothing else was. So, let's get into it.
Yeah, okay, to be honest, this first scene, I didn't think that was a drill. This is what I thought. I thought that this was going to be, the real thing, and then they're going to be, 12 hours late or earlier.
Oh, yeah, when they do that.
Yeah,
they
that's
do that
what I
lot.
thought it was gonna be, but it was a drill, which and then, the second time around, I was like, okay, this is obviously a drill, but, the first time I watch episodes, I don't think about those things because I'm just like, oh my god, this is happening.
Right.
You know what I thought it was? I actually didn't think it was the real thing because just something was really off about the situation. I thought it was a dream.
Oh,
I
that
thought
too. I
someone
could
was
get
having
that,
a dream.
Too.
The
Honestly.
lighting was all weird and the focus on characters was all
Yeah.
weird. And I was like, this feels like maybe Owen's having a nightmare or something.
That would have been interesting to see.
I honestly yeah, but you know what else this thing gave off before we got to the drill bit of it? Remember the hospital fire from 911 and the kid and his I was getting hospital fire vibes from it.
Oh yeah.
Which was also part of the thing that was okay, either they're really cheapening off of a call or but once they got the kid saying his sisters, and it just reminded me so much of that. And then the pink powder, my brain just went, what the hell?
I know, my friend was gender reveal, and I was like, yep, definitely not that.
Right.
You know what? That's also something that makes not equally as much sense.
And I was like, okay, that I started being like, what the heck is going on when I don't know, just things were happening, when the calls weren't going through or the radio were working. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't real. Okay.
I was so confused simply because of the slow motion thing until someone was like, you're all dead. I'm like, oh, that's
right. I was like, oh, now it makes more sense.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. That was certainly interesting.
And then we lead into the next scene, and I just want to erase this from my brain, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Because they get back from, this drill that they didn't know was a drill, and they're all joking, and then they're gonna take a selfie for Marjan, and they were all joking about the whole situation. And I don't know, that was just so cringy. I was just like, oh my god.
I agree it was cringy, but also at the same time, it would have been far worse if they knew there was an actual threat. They didn't know there was an actual threat
true.
Incoming. Owen was the only one who knew about the possibility of there being real bomb. Yeah, it was still cringy, but at the same time, no harm was meant.
Yeah.
Right.
Obviously they didn't mean anything by it, and they didn't know how real it was, but I was just like, oh my god, this is I can't I don't know, it was just hard to watch, to be like, oh, yikes. And obviously Owen's you think this is funny and stuff, and saying how making a good point of thinking you should think about the first responders that went on calls like that and never came back. And I was like, yeah,
that really did hit it did hit home,
right?
And that was the sort of thing where it's you know what, you can't argue with it because he's right, especially you're talking to someone who was there on 9/11.
Right. Yeah,
you don't contest that
first-hand knowledge.
Yeah, and Owen and Judd both had the same look on their faces during this whole scene.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, Judd had already been through an explosion himself. That had taken out the entire crew, which I kind of forgot about until now, if I'm being completely honest. But I was just thinking about it. I'm like, Yeah, he has full knowledge of like, boom, everyone's dead. A little bit more than the others do from first knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So like, it's unfortunate timing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
To be
And
fair, I
then-
do want that photo though. Like that would be a really cool photo. Just of them
Yeah.
goofed with the pink.
Yeah, to be fair,
That'd be
yeah. Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
Yeah. So then like Owen and Judd goes up to Owen's office and stuff, and I love what they have seen. Like this, I do. And Owen's like, you're gonna say I overreacted, and Judd's like, I'm not gonna ever tell you that, like, not even for a minute. And Judd says, like, they haven't gone through what we have. And Judd's like, I know, like, when he said, like, I know too well of like having to go to multiple funerals in a week, heck, like a few in a day, I was just like, oh
yeah,
my
that
heart.
was hard, and we know we did it.
Yeah. And like
how many total firefighters did they lose in that? It's like,
I want to say 12.
yeah,
that's
it
the
was
number
something
I was
like
coming
that.
up with. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys and ladies that they lost.
Yeah. And like Judd is sort of being like knowing that like Owen, like something's up and stuff, because like it's like for Owen, like it wasn't about the drill and he was starting to figure that out. And Owen says like how something big is coming and he doesn't think the drill was a coincidence. And Owen tells them about how, like, after they had went to that branding that they didn't know was a branding, he told him how the underdogs are on the FBI's domestic terror watch list, how they had a truck of ammonium nitrate stolen, and just like, how do you know all this? And Owen's like, oh, I've been working with them.
Yeah, it's like, oh, casually.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been able to really chat about it. So I do feel bad that he's been kind of holding that in.
Really say.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's been getting a lot of. I feel like he's gotten flack for not telling anyone. He couldn't.
Yeah.
There's literally there isn't anyone who could tell. That's kind of the entire thing about an FBI investigation.
Right.
Especially with civilians involved in the investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he already crossed the line telling O'Brien about the whole thing.
Yeah.
So can you imagine if he told more than that?
Absolutely. Like there are reasons for secrets, even if they are hard to keep.
Right. But Owen's like, oh, but they're like icing me out. Like I don't know what's happening, and I don't know what like they're planning or anything, but I know it's gonna be like something big. And so Owen wants to check it out, basically just because like 9/11 they didn't know what was coming, and like it's like, well, if I know what's coming, like that might be better for me or not. But so he makes Judd acting captain because he just doesn't want to sit back, obviously.
Yep. Which is maybe a good thing, maybe not such a good thing.
It's like 50-50 because it's like, oh God, what is he gonna do? And also like, I guess it's good to be prepared as much as you can prepare for anything like this.
I didn't expect him to go back to the underdogs, but at the same time, I didn't know what I expected him to do. I think I might have expected him to march into the FBI's office.
I was kind of like, where's this going? Like, what's it was a good question.
I don't think I had enough break to be able to expect much other than that, but like I think I just was like, so is he going to the FBI? Yeah. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing where he ended up going.
Yeah. It was interesting because he shows up at like the biker bar and he starts like they're having a meeting or whatever, and he hears yelling. So then he walks in and they're all just like, nope, you're not allowed here and stuff.
Yeah, you should not have been showing up here.
And they're like, are you wearing a wire again? He's like, you can check. And they're like, nope, we're good.
I love that. That was such a good line. He's like, no, we're good.
No, we're good. Yeah. And so like they're like, you're not welcome here. And like then Owen's like, if you like gave yourself up and said how you had the ammonium nitrate like and stuff, like maybe they'll make you a deal, and they have no idea what he's talking about.
Right. And I was actually really shocked about that in some ways, because I was thinking they were going a completely different direction.
I was like, I don't know if I was like super shocked, but I was just like, I think after the last episode, I wasn't really shocked. If this had been prior, I think I would have been a little bit more shocked, just because after like the last episode, I kind of feel like we had like a huge idea that Andy was like a huge part of it. So I don't know, I guess I didn't necessarily think they were completely drawn out of like being involved, but I also didn't think they played like a major role in that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't think they played like the most major role in it. However, I did still think they had a role in it more than they actually wound up doing.
Right.
And actually in the end, I'm surprised how very little they had to do with it all.
Yeah. Honestly, looking at it as a whole, like it's honestly surprising, like how little, like how, like obviously they're still like really terrible because they're literally Nazis and white supremacists, but it's also like compared to the other, like that shit's really bad, don't get me wrong, but like compared to the other shit that went down, that is like surprising.
I mean, they were a lot of talk.
Yeah.
Right.
And talk takes a backseat to action. Someone else took action before they did.
Right.
And so yes, they were absolutely terrible, but someone happened to surpass them. Sadly,
Yeah.
it is not a competition, but they decided to make it into one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like then of course FBI raids the bar.
Of course,
and then they
did.
arrest Owen for interfering,
Because
which
he's there.
shocker. Wrong place at the
I was
wrong
just kind of like,
time.
of course he did.
Yeah, honestly, wrong place at the wrong time. And then the one agent takes Owen outside. It is like Owen's talking to him and like saying, like I don't think they have any idea of like what's going on, or like I don't think they're like taking a part in this, like, or anything. And the agents like, why are they so like why are they acting weird, why are they so paranoid? And it's Owen's just like, what do you think?
Right.
Yeah.
And then like of course Owen's like telling him like, like something's gonna happen, like, you should look into this. And like of course the guy's like, yeah, like doesn't believe him. And then what happens? The building blows up. No shit. Gee, I would have never
expecting
guessed
that, but like yeah, at the end it's like, of course.
Yeah,
like of course.
Yeah. And then of course the 126 responds to that, and there's like a dozen.
I was like, of course.
Yeah, of course. So there's like a dozen agents inside. Paul's like, God knows how many bikers, and Judd's just like, well, did dispatch say anything about Cap? And Paul's just like, huh?
What do you mean?
And Judd points out his truck, and Paul, like, you could tell he's like sort of freaking out. And Judd's like, nope, we're not going there right now.
Yeah.
And stuff. We just have to focus on like what's here
Right.
and stuff. And at one point they were like, oh, where's Owen? Like asking one of the agents. And then of course Owen walks out with carrying Agent Casey, and she's just saying like, oh, you shouldn't be here. And then okay, like when this clip was posted before the episode aired, and everyone was like, oh my God, please don't tell me they're trying to like set him up with her. And I'm like, oh dear God, we're doing this again.
I know, I was starting to worry about that too.
Everyone was saying it, and I was like, okay, we're all on the same page. And then like of course she starts hemorrhaging and she's scared, and then Owen goes with her in the ambulance because Judd's like, oh, I got this, but she dies. And I'm like, that was sad. Like I'm not, this is terrible, and I was saying this the other day, but I was like, not to say that I'm glad she died, but I'm like just glad because I know they would have went with, oh, they're gonna like date or whatever. I know they would have done that. Come on,
I was expecting that to
that's
come
their
too,
angle.
Yeah.
It's just, and like I read like one of the interviews that Tim Minear did, and he said, yeah, like I know everyone thought we were gonna do that, but like he was like, no, like like basically we had to like kill her off because like that's just how it had to go and stuff.
Yeah, and Honestly,
I
I
was-
think the death scene had a lot more impact. Simply because he saw, like, he was seeing a slow-mo version of 9/11 starting to happen again.
I know.
Yeah.
That was so
Yeah.
sad. Like, I felt so bad.
Yeah.
Which was
Yeah,
triggering
like,
for sure.
Oh yeah.
honestly, like, I
yeah.
felt so much for Owen during this.
I know. Yeah, like
Yeah.
honestly, like all the like a lot of this stuff, it's like oh shit, like for Owen and stuff, and like Judd too, because like explosions and stuff and losing people and like that's like
Yeah.
heavy shit. It was just yeah.
I
So
feel like
then,
this is the best they've handled Owen's trauma in a while.
oh yeah, like
And I'm
Mhm.
here for it.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially like actually like acknowledging it in a sort of sense. Because it's
Yeah.
always been like he has trauma, he's going through this, but it's always been like, oh, like honestly, they didn't really deal with it until like the season finale last year.
Right. Which was
And
odd.
so-
They waited so dang long. I know there's the pandemic in the middle of it, so obviously there was reasons why they couldn't do New York stuff. The traveling involving. But yeah.
Right, yeah. But then Owen's like at the hospital and he calls O'Brien, and so he shows up and he tells him how Agent Casey died, and then he says how 9 other agents died, and like the underdogs' deaths are like in the double digits and stuff, but the only one that
And later we
survived.
find out 11 died.
Yeah. But like one of the only ones that survived was Red, and like the agent's like, oh, like he's our prime suspect, case closed, and Owen's just like, what?
No, he's not.
Yeah.
He's a victim right now.
Like
We
why
may
is
hate
it
him, but he's a
closed?
victim.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, and like the agent's like, well, he won't talk to us, so that seems guilty. And Owen's like, he won't talk to you because he hates you.
Eight. Yeah.
Like
He
just
There's a
so
is
reason
fucked
for
up.
correct.
it.
And like,
Yeah.
so Owen says like, you know, he's like, oh well, he'll talk to us and stuff.
Right.
And like he's saying how like, you know, today's blast wasn't even like wouldn't count for the quarter of the info they have. This is like just the
Mhm.
opening act. And so then they go and talk to him, and Owen and O'Brien walk in and he's like, I don't want to talk to you traitors or something like that. So Owen's like, well, I'll tell you this, 11 of your brothers are dead.
Right.
And he's like, and now the FBI thinks you're a terrorist, and he's just like, well, I'm not. And like,
Well, you are, but like not in that
Right.
way.
yeah, like in a sense, but yeah. And so like then Owen's like, well, what was going on when you guys were having that meeting when I walked in? And he's like, you set up the meeting, and he's like, no, I didn't. And Owen's like, well, they said you did. And he's like, well,
Right.
his phone was apparently spoofed. And he's like, oh, I have a pretty good idea who did it. He's like, that hothead kid. And O'Brien's like, oh, we're gonna need his name. And Rhett's like, you know his name. It's your nephew, Andy. And I'm like, of course.
Yeah. I was like, hothead, huh? Oh crap.
When he said that, I knew where this was going. I was
Yeah.
like, yep. So of course the FBI bust into his home, and they notice that his wife and son left in a hurry or whatever. It's like, oh, where did they go? But like O'Brien's like, well, I haven't talked to him in a few days and stuff. So it's just like, okay, well, that's random.
Strange.
Yeah, a little
Mhm.
random, a little strange, suspicious a little bit.
And wasn't there a spot where like they panned over to like the coffee table and like the milk was spilled or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, there
Yeah.
was literally like
Because they had
there was-
talked about they talked about you know, maybe they just went to the park and they're like
right.
they left really fast, like they really wanted to go on those swings or something.
I know.
Right?
Like you would clean
Uh,
up the milk first because you don't want to come home to spoiled milk.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
not pretty.
That's kind of
No.
nasty. But then, of course, we're getting like the details that we already know. So the agent says how like 3 days prior somebody blew up an empty school bus, and I knew that would come up. I didn't think they would forget about that.
I was just wondering when they'd bring it up. I was wondering if we'd see them discover it or
There were definitely
like when
things
that will
they
come into play.
didn't mention. Like there were a few things where I was like, oh, I wonder like if they ever figured this out, because like there were
Yeah.
things they just left out, like in my mind, as far as
There
the
were
story.
some things not wrapped up. Yeah.
Yeah, there were
Yeah.
definitely questions I still have. Like they're so minor, so it's like who cares? But I'm also like, I care.
Right.
Oh, because we care about all the stuff.
I care about every single little detail, even if it's like so minor.
Right.
It's like about the story, but like, so yeah, they know about that, and it's like, so they find like traces of Ampho or whatever, because obviously that was like the practice run, and they find the hiker that like encountered this and saw this, and then they tracked the bus down through who Andy got it from, and they identified that it was him and stuff basically. And I love to Brian be like, oh, he's not a murderer, and the agent's like, no, Sarge, he's a mass murderer.
Yeah,
Like,
it's hard to hear that, your family
I
is
know.
part of something like that.
Yeah, like that was terrible, but it was also like it was one of those things where you hear it, you're like, damn, but that was a good line.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was just my
Yeah.
thought, like hearing that. And
Yeah.
like, okay, so my theory going into the episode was that like Andy was like the ringleader of all of this, and the kid Mikey,
We're meant to believe that.
because
Yeah.
okay, the kid Mikey gave such a weird vibe off in the first episode we saw him in. The fact that he was so fascinated with Owen and that he survived
Mhm.
9/11 and he's a first responder, I was like, okay, this kid is not right. He has to be roped in to it somehow. But like I thought that like Andy held him up to it, which obviously we know like that's far from the truth, which we'll talk about later. But
Yeah.
that
I'll
was
be
kind of
fair.
my working theory.
You know how I said I skip past things sometimes?
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
skip through a lot of the Mikey interaction.
Yeah.
So I think I might have to try and pick after Katie a little bit more now. I just like to avoid secondhand embarrassment as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I tend to avoid past things where I'm like, this is gonna be awkward as heck. And usually it's fine. I think I might need to take these off a bit more. Because honestly, I forgot Mikey existed.
Yeah,
I just felt like, okay, great, another neo-Nazi.
I didn't forget it, and I had a bad vibe from the kid. I mean, because
Oh, definitely.
something just seemed off with him. So I was always kind of like, okay, something's up. I just wasn't sure what it was. And then after this scene, I was like, okay, what is going on here? And I was starting to feel like, is Andy, the O'Brien's nephew, being forced to do this by somebody else? And then the pieces started like filling up. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and like Owen's like, well, like, when they called about the info, they like thought the honor dogs had moved it, but it was probably Andy because he was probably living there. And it's like, how did like they literally moved that so fast?
Right.
And so Owen's like, he might still be there. So of course they go there and yeah. So like then
I have many
Owen,
emotions about these coming scenes.
yeah, same.
Me too.
So the next one freaking gave me chills because Owen's telling the 126 that he is working with the FBI. And so like through this we're also getting the raid and Carlos is there and I'm like, oh yes.
I was like, me.
Like yes. We're getting so much. And Owen's speech, like I'm if I listened to it again I could probably cry because it was just so chilling and I was literally getting like physical chills like just hearing it and stuff, especially like him talking it like in his own experience and like
Right.
Owen telling them to like prepare themselves and make sure they tell their people that they love them, and Judd immediately texting Grace like I love you wife, and I
Oh
was
my
like,
God, that
oh.
broke me.
I was
That
like, oh my
broke
God,
me.
I knew that.
That literally like absolutely destroyed me. And then I think this part even especially set it in like overdrive because literally then they get the call and it's like all the stations are being dispatched and it's like fire and rescue 121 122 123 126 127 128 and then it repeats and you're just like, oh shit, like that was literally just me during that. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
The moment they start calling more than 2 units, you know it's big. But when they're calling got like eight, then you're like, people are gonna die. You know something big is going down.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And even like I think somebody said that like, oh, this is fake, like
Yeah.
and stuff. So
And
then,
you're just you're waiting to hear. You're like, okay, did the bomb actually go off?
Right.
Is it
I
just a threat?
know.
You're waiting to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. And we got Carlos and O'Brien, which we knew we were getting this at some point because it was teased before the season even aired. But like it was
Mhm.
interesting and I liked it. And stuff. And so like they had like obviously like went through like these buildings or whatever. And Carlos is like telling O'Brien, like, oh, they're all clear. And O'Brien's like, well, it looks the same as when Owen and him had been there. And he says how like, like they like somebody had to been watching them when they found the info in the warehouse. And
Mm-hmm.
like, like it was just it was very obvious and stuff. And like so Carlos is like, well, we could be being watched now. And O'Brien's just like, yeah. And
I hate being watched.
Yeah, it's creepy. Yeah.
just yeah. And
That
so,
feeling when you know.
yeah. And like they're going through everything, and then the agent's like saying how like, oh, we're gonna clear out of here because we have to go to the Capitol because there was a bomb threat called into there and stuff. And O'Brien wants to stay, and they're like, well, we're not gonna go on a wild goose chase here. Like there's literally nothing
Right.
here. And
To
so
be
like,
fair, they had
Yeah.
to go where they were needed right then,
Yeah.
which
Right.
was
And
the capital. So
yeah, which is what they wanted.
exactly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like so Carlos stays behind to like back up O'Brien, which
Loved that.
Loved it.
Oh my god, it just connected the dots. If Carlos had left, it would have just been Carlos all over again in the kidnapping scene because he didn't call for backup and he didn't have backup. So this was Carlos's way of staying with O'Brien. So O'Brien had backup. Holy
O'Brien would
crap.
have been
Mhm.
dead if
Yeah.
Oh, he would have been
Carlos
so
had
dead.
left.
It would have
Oh
been
my
so dead.
Oh, I just connected those. Okay.
We love it.
We love that moment.
So they're at the Capitol, and like everyone's like, it was funny because like I mean not funny, but like last season we got the call about like the Capitol when Catherine was there, and the funny part is like everyone was like, oh my god, where's Catherine? I'm like, guys, remember they mentioned that she's in DC?
Yeah, she took a job in DC. I remember that.
So she's not here.
Right.
Like I'm like, okay.
I wasn't even thinking about her.
I just remembered that
honestly.
detail. Like I didn't think of her when it came to it, but some people did apparently. So they're evacuating the Capitol, and like the people are getting behind the trucks and stuff like that. And like so the police chief or whatever and one of the security guards and Owen are all looking at the security footage and stuff. Like they're going to because they're like, oh, we found something. And they think they found the info in the Capitol or whatever. And it's just like, oh shit, stuff is happening. Then back to like Carlos and O'Brien. Carlos is like starting to ask questions, and he's like, so this guy we're looking for, is he like some kind of survivalist or something?
Yeah.
And O'Brien's like, well, not exactly. He washed out of the Cub Scouts when he was 7. And Carlos is just like, how do you
How do you
know
know
that?
Hashtag
And
random.
O'Brien's like, well, he's my nephew, yeah. And then O'Brien finds something, so you're getting like closer and closer and stuff. And so then we see them at the Capitol looking at the security footage, and Owen wants to like, he's like, oh well, let's see this angle, let's try to look at this. And then of course, no surprise, he leaves. He starts going like towards that building where all this is, and and I'm just sitting here like, Owen, don't do anything stupid. And I love TK being like, I really hate when he does that.
Oh my gosh, I loved that.
I loved that moment.
Yeah, because
that was just TK's resignation of, well,
TK is like, oh, not again.
Yeah, right. Really.
Yeah. And so like like everyone's being like, Owen's not responding. The only one he actually responds to is Judd, and Owen's just like,
I love that.
Owen's just
no
like,
one follow me.
No one follow me, exactly.
Looking out for his people at the last, which we love.
Yeah.
We knew he was gonna do that. Like, come on.
Like, it's like, of course he did. If anyone was
It
gonna do
happens
it,
like
it
in
was gonna be
every
him.
type of major emergency. Owen goes exactly where he shouldn't go.
It's that cowboy culture that he's got.
That's fair. But like, like they find things, and O'Brien's like, oh, like, so like I'll go in and you can cover me on like the south side. So he's like, oh, I'll holler if I need you. And so he goes in, and then we see Owen go in, and he's like, I'll be out in a minute. Like, okay, Owen, okay. And then so O'Brien's searching this place, and like it's clear somebody is staying there. And then we see like the newspaper clippings of Owen, which honestly I'm still confused about. O'Brien's then like he hears like rattling and stuff, and there's like back and forth because you get like then we get Owen, and he's like moving the stuff that the Ampho is supposedly in, and I'm like, Owen, let's not touch things.
Yeah.
I was just like, that could potentially be a very stupid idea.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Aren't you not supposed to touch a damn
Right. But I think at this point, Owen's thinking it's fake, and he's wanting to prove it.
Because he's seen property of Austin, of the city of Austin inside of the barrels for one thing.
Yeah.
And
because the security guard kept asking, well, how'd they get it in behind security? And Owen's like, well, that's why, or that's how.
The one thing I have my question on, how did someone get past security to go down and rig those? Like, that's a lot easier than sneaking something into the Capitol, but you still have to sneak something of a sort. You have to still sneak the wires, you still have to sneak the fake detonator, you still have to sneak the stuff in to make it look like a bomb. That's what I'm wondering how they did.
I know the Washington State Capitol, certain times of the day or visitor times where you can go and tour the Capitol. There's certain rooms you can't go in because it's, obviously it's official, but you can go basically wander around the whole place.
Oh yeah.
I live next to Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a whole nother Capitol situation there.
Right.
But I also live around my state capital.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the regulations there. Probably, well, it's definitely looser than DC's, but I don't know how much looser we're talking.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I also think generally security is just a lot more boosted the closer you get to DC.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always wonder how this stuff happens too. It's like, but yeah. So
if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, that's true. And there's also like dumb people that some dumb people that are like in the our security and don't actually do what they're supposed to be doing. So there's that. But O'Brien checks out this noise, and it's Andy's wife and his son. Andy's son, like his wife is they're basically tied up or whatever and stuff, and it's just like, oh shit, okay. And then Owen opens the barrel, and obviously it's fake, and I'm just like, well, okay. And so then somebody's behind O'Brien, and it's Mikey, and I'm just like, of course this would happen. And he shoots him and stuff, and he's like, the only thing about those bulletproof vests is they don't do jack for your head. And then he tries to shoot him, but then Carlos, I was like, where's Carlos? Carlos is just there so quick and shoots him, and I'm like, yes.
I was so proud of my boy.
Oh my gosh, me too. I was like, yes, Carlos, getting some action. Not that he didn't already have enough, but
didn't even blink. You're doing great, sweetie.
Literally.
That was awesome.
Looking great, doing great. That's what I had to say about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Owen's like, well, it's not a hoax. It's about the info. It's a decoy. So there's some here somewhere. And then of course we see a new ambulance pull up, and I'm like, shocker. First of all, it's random for one to be pulling up after all this time. And second shocker, it's Andy. Oh, so shocking.
Yeah, and
indeed.
Tommy had thought it was a little strange because the driver showed up with no crew.
No crew. And I'm sure she was like, I don't think they're supposed to
Yeah.
be. Like, because it is so much later.
Yeah. And
Like, unless they'd had like mass casualties starting, they shouldn't have needed another ambulance there at that point. Not outside who's already there.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so like, and then of course you have this 10-minute countdown going down with the bomb in this ambulance, and you're like, okay, well that's not good. And so
Yeah, that's anything but.
yeah.
Right.
So Owen's like radioing Judd, telling him like to get everyone back inside or for reverse evacuation. Now inside is like the safest place they can be.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian is like somehow like O'Brien and Owen are like talking and stuff. And like O'Brien's like, oh well, I found Joanne and Jacob and they were in the stables with Andy, and apparently Mikey had threatened them and threatened Andy if he didn't do what he said he was going to do, that he was going to basically kill his family. And like O'Brien's like, well, Andy didn't want to do this and stuff, like he's being forced. And
Right.
then like this is when like it was pretty like they're figuring out that there was a bomb in the ambulance, but it's like catch up.
Yeah.
Like,
Bro,
we
catch up and
know.
stop this already.
And Owen's just like, so Owen is like, whoa, when we find Andy, I want to talk to him. And the
Of course
agent's
you do.
just, yeah, exactly. And the agent's like, are you nuts? When we find him, we're gonna take him out, period.
Oh,
I'm like, not so fast, Trigger Happy Honey.
I know.
yeah.
Like, I get it, because this is literally like one of the worst things in the world, but also
Right.
I'm like, maybe let's calm down just a tad, just an ounce. And
Oh yeah, like he definitely there was definitely reason to need to take him out, but also at the same time, you're getting other information right now that
Right,
makes this
yeah.
not such a cut and dry
Yeah.
case.
And in his defense, I don't think he knew the details that Owen knew. So in his defense, he was like, he's a bad person, like he's did all this terrible stuff. So like
Well, it wasn't
he
even a overall moral judgment. It was he is sitting in what is about to take out most of Austin. We
Mhm.
need to
Pretty
take him out
much.
first.
Pretty much. And like Owen's like, well, he didn't want to do this. He only did this because his family was in danger. And it's like, but they're not. And Owen's like, well, Owen being Owen is like, I'll find him myself. And
Right.
so Owen goes looking for Andy to talk to him. And so he does, and the agents are surrounding the car, and Owen talks to him, telling him that, no, I'm Owen, and he's like, I know who you are. And it's like, obviously he did when you showed up at the 126 last episode, but Owen has no idea about that.
Right. Yep.
And Andy's like worried about his family, but Owen's like, they're okay. But he doesn't believe him, so Owen has to like give him the phone so he could talk to his wife and be like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, they actually are okay. And Owen tells them like, get out of the car, like,
Right. Do exactly what they say. Put your
yeah.
hands up.
Yeah. And like, but like the thing is like the timer can't be stopped. Like it's like there's no stopping it. And so Owen, what does Owen do? He gets in the ambulance and he drives off. And I'm like, of course he does. And I mean, to be fair,
The moment he did this, I knew what was going to happen because I have seen this happen in Criminal Minds before, and I was like, okay, yep, I didn't know the exact details, but I knew where this was going.
Yeah, I had a sort of idea because I have seen this done in shows, so I was like, okay, yeah, this is gonna go one of very few ways.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so Owen calls 911, and of course he gets Grace, and so she has to find him somewhere to put this ambulance.
And I love her, like, I did not think I'd get this call today.
Yeah, this is not the call I was expecting. And Owen's like, well, I have 110 seconds left on this countdown. And, he's like, I have 7,000 pounds of info in here. And she's like, are you sure? And he's like, yep, pretty sure. And so she brings him to a like boat ramp. And Grace is like telling him how, he's going to basically drive this ambulance into the water, and once it's under, it'll be good. So yeah,
I thought that was kind of cool actually, because that specific chemical goes inert in water are some chemicals that do that.
Yeah, I've definitely seen this before, and
Yeah.
but like we're waiting for him to jump out. I'm like, can you jump out already?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, he had to take it around the turns.
Yeah.
Didn't
Didn't he
even
ask
that.
Grace something like, "Can you please pray that it's not being used right now?"
Oh yeah, the boat. Yeah, he was. Yeah, and of course, Otis like right behind him, and he pushes the ambulance even further in the water because it was like not
Yeah.
sinking. And I'm just like, okay, when Ted pulled up, I was like, what the hell? What are you doing? And stuff. And then like of course it goes under more, and then it like the water splashes and whatever. And I was like, oh, thank God, another 2 seconds, and Paul's just like, yeah, and half of downtown Austin would be dead, and just like, and us, and he starts laughing, and Paul
Yeah.
starts laughing. He's like, why the hell are you guys laughing? And it's like, well, what are you laughing at? And they're all laughing. And Mateo, I love it. Mateo is the one, he's like, oh well, info doesn't explode underwater, it converts to laughing gas, hence the laughing.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And that's just like, how the hell do you know that? And Mateo's like, you guys really need to reread the manual again. And I love that Mateo was the one to bring that up. I was like, okay, to be honest, to be fair, he would be the one that would know that.
Yeah. He's always been with that stuff.
Yeah.
Which I did fact check it. Because I wasn't really sure. And let's do it. It's a little bit more of a tricky process than just ammonium-nitrate in water, because there has to be like temperature and all that. However, a hot explosion would do it. So yes, technically they are correct. My only picky thing about this scene is just that wouldn't the bump from the fire truck rattle things a little bit much? I don't know.
I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about it.
Like, it's fine. My brain just overthinks things. So
I mean, same, but like, not this.
it was great. Like, they did a good ending for this one.
So then we get little context where that was like last summer, and this is the context sort of needed, but I'm also like still confused about some things. But we see Andy outside the bar, clearly upset, and he's like, they apparently threw him out for like, he's like, for doing what they always talk about. And then Mikey finds him and is like, well, all they do is talk, they don't ever like take action. And he's like, well, we can see action. And it's like, oh no. And it's very frightening, obviously. And like, especially things Mikey says, I'm just like, oh dear. And he's just like, oh, we can wake people up with a loud noise. And I'm like, oh god. And Andy's talking to the FBI now after all this, and he's like telling him everything that happened and how he was angry and how he knows he should have like walked away. And the agent was like, but instead you entered a criminal conspiracy with him. And Andy says, like, it was a big mistake of my life, but by the time he realized it was too late. And that was like after they got the info. Okay, when they showed this, I was just like, what the hell? Because like, you get this whole truckload of this shit, and then you see a hostage, and you're like, why? And stuff. Like, Andy told Mikey this is not what he signed up for, that like he has a family, and obviously he threatened to kill his family if he didn't go through. And he knew he was serious when they're blowing that bus up. And so the way we saw it is we saw Andy shoot the dude, but actually Mikey shot the dude, the hiker guy.
Yeah.
That was
I liked how they
oh, shit.
expanded that scene a little bit more.
Me too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was good, because like, I was like, oh shit, I never saw that coming. Like, I honestly didn't piece together that like he was part of it until like before the episode aired. And there were honestly like, I just had that over like just the weird vibes that we got in that other episode he was in and stuff. And like, we also got like in the beginning of this episode, they had said that like they booted him too because he was crazy.
Right.
And like, so like Andy's like saying how like you could tell he was just like, what, like after that, like what the hell just happened when like and stuff. And then he says how like he forced him to pack up the info and put in beer kegs at the clubhouse, like blow it up. And then he says how like then he like had to like pack it up in the ambulance and bring it to like the Capitol, and like he had to do it for his family and all this stuff, and like then he like thanks them for like saving all those people and his family and that stuff, and I'm just like, okay, but I don't know. Here's some things I'm confused about. Okay, so like in that one episode at the end, we saw that like he had all these pictures of Owen. So like, what did Owen have to do with all like this? That's what I'm confused about.
Yeah, I was a little confused. Like, where was this going?
Like,
then because he was a part of it, they were trying to like get to know him so they could get closer to him, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's possible. But like I'm like, the way they had all those pictures of him, I'm like, it kind of made it seem like they were going after him, but I'm also like, what did he do besides like just randomly showing up at this biker bar, like
right
on like a couple of occasions?
Yeah.
Honestly, I've just always taken it, like, I do agree it's a little like unexplained, but like between Mikey's fascination with Owen and 9/11,
yeah,
I feel like his twisted mind just was like idolized 9/11 as being such a huge terror attack, and having a well-known figure of that attack maybe made it a little bit more real. Maybe having the idea of that same person fighting whatever he did. I do agree we should have gotten more answers on that, but that's my general suspicion personally.
Right, yeah. Honestly, when Andy showed up at the firehouse in the last episode, he was expecting to find Owen. I almost feel like, I don't think that was to like be like to Owen back off or to be like to like attack Owen. I think that was more so like a cry for help, be like to help him, because obviously he's doing, and then he didn't get Owen, so it's like, oh well, because you're not going to tell Marge on this, because like that's crazy,
right? Because so far only person he knew is Owen,
right? Yeah.
I don't know, that was definitely interesting, and obviously it was there to steal the radio, but there was something
okay
else.
What happened to the radio?
And also I want to like, what exactly were they working out with those notes? Because some of what I suspected, like a fraction of what I suspected, came true. That they had brought a decoy to bring in more people, bring them to where they were going to explode. I thought it was just going to be more targeted to first responders, and I was wrong on that. But I am curious, what were the notes then? Were they trying to see if it would be conspicuous bringing in a new ambulance?
But they brought in so late. It was probably to figure out response times for each.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Or like where they were in relation to certain things.
Which that reminds me of that like in 911 when they did that.
Definitely some throwback moments.
Oh yeah, it was, I don't know, but then of course like Andy's arrested and stuff, and like so O'Brien's like talking to Owen, he's like, oh, he's gonna take like a 20-year plea, and he's like, oh well, now his son is gonna grow up out of his dad, kind of like how he did, and it's like, and then like Owen's like, well, better that than like being dead.
Got a point.
Yeah, like it was a nice talk with O'Brien and Owen, because O'Brien's like, well, thank you for being a pain in my ass, and Owen's like, oh, that's what I do. Like I loved that, and it was interesting to say the least. I don't know, honestly, this whole thing like I don't know, like when it started, if like I knew it was gonna happen, but it definitely didn't happen the way I was expecting. Like,
not at
but
all.
I like sort of how it wrapped up. I'm glad it wrapped up, because I was kind of getting to the point where I was like, okay, can we like end this now? Because it's like, yeah, I'm good. Like it was, I don't know. It wasn't like a storyline where like, wow, yeah, this is great. But I'm also like, it was there.
Really liked the storyline. I am glad it did wrap up in this episode though, so we can look to moving on to different things.
Exactly.
Which we already got a teasing of what that's gonna be.
Oh yes. The final scene. Okay, this is the best scene of the episode easily. I mean, I agree. It was so good. And so Owen shows up at TK and Carlos's. It was so cute. And Owen shows up with Chinese and stuff, and TK's just like, Dad, and he's just like what are you doing here? And Owen's just like, oh, I thought I would surprise you. And TK says, well, I'm surprised. And Carlos is literally putting dinner on the table as we speak. And Owen's just like, oh, I should have called. And Carlos is like, don't be ridiculous. Like, and says, oh, we'll get wine or whatever. And TK is like looking at it and he's like, is this the place that we used to get with mom? And Owen's like, yep. And Owen's like, son, have I ever told you recently that how proud I am of you? And TK's just like, well, not recently, but it hasn't been an eternity either. And Owen says how like, oh, I am. And TK's like, oh, thanks, Dad. And he's like, asked what brought this up. And Owen's like, well, just the fact that throughout all our ups and downs, you have never once tried to blow up a government building.
Oh,
so Owen,
genius.
I was like,
that's so Owen.
TK's response, thanks.
Thanks. I guess. Carlos is like, oh, I'll drink to that. Oh yeah, you will, because like you don't want your fiance to be wrapped up in crap like that. Owen says like, oh, this is nice, and is like, oh, so the wedding's coming up, and Carlos is like, yeah, and Owen's like, yeah, it's coming up, and TK's like, yeah, it is. And Owen's just like, I have thoughts. And I'm like, of course you do. And
It's Owen.
and he's like, and here's what they are. First of all, there's always a temptation, I think, when it's your first wedding. Hopefully there won't be a second one. Right? But when it's your first wedding, and I'm like, oh, Owen.
Well,
it was so sweet. Like,
Oh god.
I thought it was
Carlos.
great.
I love that.
It was so great. Like I was like, when the scene started, I'm like, oh, there's so many those handful of people are gonna be like, oh, but I'm like, it's sweet. You can't even like, even people that were like, people were like, they're honestly people that are like, that was good for Owen. Like that was, I actually liked that. Like, but obviously, like me being like, yeah, I love that. It was, it melted
That
to
was
me.
really good.
Oh yeah, I mean, I thought it was amazing.
Oh, of course.
Like, yeah, this was probably just in general one of my favorite Owen episodes of all time, just because he rocked it.
Yeah.
But I do love probably about that time they're like, can we just have like a fake mass terror threat come through to like get him off our backs right now, please? Like, of course.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, Owen's been like a terrible parent. I'm like, he's had a little on his plate that unfortunately he hasn't been able to talk about. So I think the only thing that would have made this episode even better for me was if there had been a TK Owen scene, like at the firehouse, like TK saying something to his dad, like even calling him out on like, he's like, here I've been thinking all this time that you've just like ditched me, or you're like blowing me off for a spa day, and like you've been dealing with this, like why didn't you say something? But yeah, I love this. This was a really good episode. So.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of stuff, like TK and Owen having a talk about like their relationship and what about that is going to possibly come up. I think it is, because I think I heard all that stuff, even with all the wedding stuff that's going to be in 8. I think that is going to come up in that episode.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been online as much lately, so I haven't really seen.
There's been very vague details, but I have heard, like, I do know, like, just on what Ronan has said is going to happen in that episode. It's going to be, like, wedding, like, it's going to be wedding stuff, but I think the ONTK stuff does come up in that episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which I'm excited for, like, the next episode.
Oh.
The one after, oh, yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just like any time like a bunch of Tarlos stuff comes up, I'm like,
yeah. Especially what we know what's leading to. I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they finally talked about the wedding, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's happening, and I'm like, I wonder how far in that, because they're like, oh, it's coming up soon, and I'm like, how far in that project? Like the last time we talked about the wedding, the thought of a divorce and an annulment was brought up, so
yeah,
I'm like, I'm a little curious of where we're at.
And even so, like, even Owen's comment in the last scene, like talking about like, so when it's your first wedding, hopefully there's not a second one.
I know people got so mad about that, but it's like, come on, that's like, it was supposed to be funny.
Yeah,
I thought that was
like,
hilarious.
That's not harmful Owen
humor. That was such that's like Owen. If you don't find that funny, like get a sense of humor.
That sounds like no problem.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked this episode. Like
Me too.
it was good stuff. It was good stuff. Like
Mhm.
it was honestly like I don't know. There were like a lot of things where I was like, I don't know. I wanted a little more like I guess details on things.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I didn't like how they I don't know. I was gonna say I didn't like how they focused on Andy in the end when he wasn't like the major one that did shit, but like I understand that it was that we only really care what happens to him, or they want us to.
I
But
mean, I have many questions on Mikey. Like,
I do too. That's why I said that. I was like, because like it's not like he died. He was only shot in the shoulder.
Mhm.
exactly. Like, I have a hunch. I don't know. Part of me suspects we're not hearing the end of him,
Oh, dear.
but at the
Probably
same
not.
time, like, just the fact they didn't end off with that, and that we do have so many questions still regarding his fascination with
Yeah.
Owen. I don't
Right.
know. We'll see.
Yeah. I'm getting. It's like me just visualizing things. I'm visualizing Owen visiting him and like wherever he is
Oh gosh.
in jail
That
or
would be
something.
Owen. That would be Owen.
That would be Owen. He would
That certainly would, yes.
I hope not. But like we all know that's I don't know, this could, come up. But yeah, I guess let's go to fan thoughts.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was definitely interesting hearing people said because everyone had like such different opinions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, like online, everyone had like their I don't know, everyone had different things to say. I'm glad the Owen storyline is over personally. It's fair. I kind of feel the same way. It was okay, not the greatest, but I did like the end, of course. I laughed at the Ampho explosion at the end, and it was a great episode. Okay, that was funny because I was like, okay, how is this gonna like play out?
Right.
Oh, I knew it had to be the nephew on the suspicious guy looking for Owen. It felt really weird with Marjan being gone, and I think with Owen's past, the bomb drill brought back a lot of flashbacks to 9/11, which I feel represents first responders still alive and still working as a first responder after the attacks, and they respond to possible bomb threats or explosions. Amazing, great Carlos and O'Brien scenes. The tension of upcoming terrorist threat was strong, especially when the numbers were called out, and the ending with Carlos scene sold an already amazing episode.
Right.
Enjoyed it way more than expected. The tension throughout the episode was well done. Seeing Carlos shoot a white supremacist was great.
That
Owen's
was immensely satisfying.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally. Owen's speech during the montage was excellent. Loved the music. It was very somber and I could feel the hopelessness. I felt very bad for O'Brien. I think he had a lot of misplaced guilt and thought he could have prevented what happened, but ultimately he did make a difference because his family is still alive. I do not feel bad for Andy. The flashback definitely confirmed that he was not innocent. He was fine with the underdogs until his family was put in danger, and he can rot in prison for all I care. Finally, my favorite scene in the episode was Owen visiting TK and Carlos, especially since it is the 1 year anniversary of 308 airing, and we get them eating Chinese food. Oh, I didn't even think about that shit. Now I'm about to cry.
Yeah, I did
and
catch that. It was it's 1 year anniversary of that. That's
talking about wedding planning, and Owen telling TK that he's proud of them. I did think the thought, because a lot of people are like online talking about like, do you think they were trying to sympathize, like, I don't know, sympathize like Andy, sympathize, like, I don't know. I think it was mostly they were talking about Andy, and I was like, in a sense, like, I think they were trying to make us feel bad because like, but like also like, you did terrible shit.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about it, honestly, when I think about it, I think back to January 6th on the attack on the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Because I live in Maryland. I live very close to the Capitol.
Right.
I remember when that attack happened, and I remember being scared that it would cross over because we are literally right near there.
Right.
But I also remember all the aftermath and the aftermath that is still taking place, and all the killer everyday people that were getting arrested, served warrants, because they took place in a terrorist attack, which
Yeah.
was what January 6th was.
Right.
And I think where I'm going with this is you have the people like Mikey and like a lot of the people that were at January 6th, but you also have a lot of people that get in over their heads
Right.
and then can't get back out, which is the same with a lot of these cultish groups.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm looking at it. Like everyone, January 6th did a terrible thing. Andy did a terrible thing in this, but can't help that. Think that probably a couple of people, at least a few of the people at January 6th, were in over their heads. And I think the same was with Andy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He just
He was
didn't know,
definitely-
then couldn't get back out.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, that was a good way to put it. Oh, okay. Let's talk about the promo. Honestly, nothing really happened, which honestly, I'm fine with that. So we're getting Tommy and Trevor again, which, you know, that's been on pause for a few episodes, stuff, and they're like talking about like what will happen when we tell our kids about us. And so then like Melody, Trevor's daughter, is like talking to Tommy and she's like, you have to break up with him. And I'm like, and you can tell Tommy's just standing there, like trying to laugh it off subtly. Like she's like,
Right.
and so yeah, and then we have this woman who says like she has to be like basically upside down or she'll die. And Owen's just like, when you say like she'll die again, and Owen's like, when you say die again. And so the lady's husband is like, oh, well, her heart stopped when she was flat. And then when she was upside down, she woke up again. And so then she flatlines. Okay, and I'm watching this and I'm trying to think, which emergency medical show did I see this on? And I was talking about it when my friend and I were live the other day, and people were commenting, they're like, okay, this is on Grey's Anatomy. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. My friend's like, okay, it had to be on like on Grey's Anatomy or Station 19. And I'm like, I was literally sitting there for like, because I read the synopsis like last week. I was like, which show was this on?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
stuff.
I do feel like some calls, I don't mean this in a bad way either. I do feel like some calls lately are feeling very similar to other ones on other shows.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I said the ambulance trick was something I saw in, was a version of something I saw in Criminal Minds.
Yeah.
Not to say it's not a good trick or that they shouldn't use it. I'm just like,
Right.
I feel like they might be using like more that we've seen in other.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like a lot of these shows, like every single, like all these shows have like, there's a lot of crossover in the cases they use, but I think it's just because a lot of them are common and a lot of them happen a lot. Like I've seen like 5 different medical shows all do like a hacker episode where the hospital's hacked. And I've seen like versions of all these things, and it's not necessarily like a bad thing. I don't even care because like each show does it different. Because like in Grey's Anatomy, this guy is like holding this lady by her ankles,
Oh my God.
like and stuff. And this is like, I almost like it when they share calls because I'm like, okay, how are they gonna do it?
Yeah.
Like how, because it's not gonna be the same and stuff. I don't know. I'm excited to see how it plays out. Honestly, I'm not really excited for anything in this episode. It's definitely gonna be interesting with the like how like things play out with, you know, Tommy dating and like how this is, because like I don't know, this is so dramatic. It's like break up with him and I'm like, what are you, like 8?
I know, right? I was, yeah. That's not.
And I get like the difference between her daughters and his daughter is like she's a child of divorce, or I think they're just separated. I don't even know if they went through divorce. Where her daughters, like their dad died, so it's a lot different.
Right.
So it's gonna be interesting to see like how that plays out on both sides.
Yeah, you're right, because it's definitely going to be interesting because the girls, her twins, know that, you know, eventually mom may date again, and Trevor's daughter is definitely not in that mindset.
No, especially since like we know like in the first episode of this season, it was mentioned that that like she basically chose who she was going to live with, and so he moved her here, and like was this the right decision? And that's definitely gonna play out too. But I don't know. We'll see.
Mhm.
Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Anchor. We are also on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, and everywhere else you can get your podcasts. On iTunes and Spotify, please rate us and leave us a review. It would mean a lot to us. You guys can follow the podcast on our socials at 911 LS Roundup on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Be sure to join our Discord server. The link will be on the description of this podcast and also in our Instagram bio.
You guys can follow me, Katie F. Love Tarlos, on Instagram and TikTok.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at Ronan Rafa 911 on Instagram and at Sheepgirl31 on Twitter.
Follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram and Twitter.
Bye.
Bye.